No longer. Alimony, palimony. It's all financial. Love's an illusion.
It's the only illusion that counts, my friend.
Says who?
Anyone who's ever been in love.
Love sucks.
Every day, I share another story from the Golden Age and the moments that shaped an unforgettable era. If you'd like to keep these memories alive with me, hit subscribe. It costs you nothing, but it means a lot. Thank you for being here. Now let's begin. In 1985, a magazine article slapped him with the infamous Brat Pack label, and Andrew McCarthy has said it almost wrecked his career. He was the dream guy of the 80s, the sensitive one, the safe choice, the romantic lead in movies like Pretty in Pink. But behind the camera, things were messy. He was drinking too much, struggling to connect with people, and constantly feeling like a fraud. Then, in the early 2000s, he did something completely unexpected, something far away from Hollywood, and years later, he returned, but not in the way anyone saw coming. So, what really happened to Andrew McCarthy? That's Fada Black. Andrew Thomas McCarthy was born on November 29, 1962, in Westfield, New Jersey, a quiet suburb where dreaming big wasn't really the norm. His dad worked in investments and his mom was an artist, but McCarthy has said he always felt something was missing. He calls himself shy and unsure, someone who never quite fit in. Acting became his escape, or maybe his entry point into life itself. He went to NYU's Tisch School of the Arts, learning from some of the same teachers who trained legends like De Niro and Pacino. But McCarthy wasn't about method acting or grim realism. He just wanted to feel something, to step into someone else's shoes for a while. His first real break came in 1983 with a coming-of-age drama where he starred opposite Jacqueline Bisset and a young Rob Lowe. It wasn't a blockbuster, but people noticed him. His piercing blue eyes and that haunted, wistful look made casting directors see a romantic lead. That's exactly what he became. In 1985, he got cast in Heaven Help Us, a small drama about Catholic school kids in the 60s. Again, not a huge hit, but it put him in the right rooms. Directors loved him, producers loved him. He was easy to work with, reliable, and he photographed beautifully. But even then, McCarthy felt like a pretender, like everyone else had it figured out and he was just faking it. That imposter feeling would stick with him for years. Then, 1985 blew everything wide open. Andrew McCarthy was cast in St. Elmo's Fire, Joel Schumacher's ensemble drama about recent college grads navigating adulthood. The cast? Emilio Estevez, Rob Lowe, Demi Moore, Judd Nelson, Ali Sheedy, and Mare Winningham. Basically every under-25 actor in Hollywood at the time. The movie did okay, but what came next was seismic. In June 1985, New York Magazine ran David Blum's article, Hollywood's Brat Pack. Meant to profile Emilio Estevez, it turned into a brutal takedown. The young cast was painted as shallow, privileged, and interchangeable. Blum lumped them all together under that dismissive Brat Pack label. McCarthy says that article felt like a death sentence. Suddenly, he wasn't just Andrew McCarthy, he was Andrew McCarthy, Brat Pack member. In Hollywood, once a label sticks, it defines you before you even walk into a room. Still, roles kept coming. In 1986, he starred opposite Molly Ringwald in Pretty in Pink as Blaine McDonough, the rich, preppy guy who falls for the artsy girl from the wrong side of the tracks. McCarthy brought something quietly complicated to the role, a hint of shame, like Blaine knew he was supposed to be better than he was. The movie was a massive hit, cementing McCarthy as the guy again, the one audiences rooted for, the one who showed up when it counted. But here's what set him apart from most of his peers. He had universal appeal. While other actors usually drew either the girls or the guys, McCarthy was for everyone. Rob Lowe had that untouchable golden boy vibe that made him a teen idol, but a lot of guys found him hard to relate to. McCarthy, though, had this chill, almost self-deprecating energy that made him easy to like. He wasn't the coolest guy in the room, but he didn't try to be, and that made him magnetic. Women saw him as sweet and romantic, while guys saw him as just a regular dude, someone they could hang out with or call a friend. He didn't come off as full of himself. He seemed uncertain, even a little awkward, and in a decade full of over-the-top personalities and big egos, that made him stand out. Then came Less Than Zero in 1987, and everything shifted. Based on Bret Easton Ellis's novel, it was a dark, nihilistic glimpse into the lives of rich LA teens spiraling into drugs and self-destruction. McCarthy played Clay, a college student who returns home to find his best friend, played by Robert Downey Jr., addicted to cocaine and selling himself to pay off debts. It was the most stripped down, vulnerable performance McCarthy had ever given, and he said it was the most honest one too. By that point, he was drinking heavily himself. Not quite at Downey's level, but enough to understand the emptiness of the character. Critics dismissed the movie as glossy and too Hollywood, but McCarthy knew the truth of that numbness. It wasn't acting, it was reality. Later that same year, he starred in Mannequin, a romantic comedy about a guy who falls in love with a store mannequin that comes to life. It was ridiculous, campy, and over the top, but pure fun. A complete 180 from less than zero, it made over $42 million and became a cult classic. That was the thing about Andrew McCarthy in the 80s. He was everywhere, but somehow nowhere at once. He was the face on the poster, but even he wasn't sure who he was underneath it. By the 90s, the Brat Pack label had done its damage. McCarthy has been blunt about it. Hollywood didn't know what to do with him once he stopped looking like a teen. He wasn't a traditional leading man, nor a character actor. He had been cast as the romantic teen interest, and when that window closed, so did the opportunities. In 1988, he reunited with Molly Ringwald for Fresh Horses, a darker, grittier drama about a college student falling for a troubled girl from rural Kentucky. On paper, it should have worked. The same pairing that made Pretty in Pink a hit, but audiences didn't show up. Critics ignored it, and the chemistry that once sparkled just fizzled. It was clear the era was over. He tried gritty material with Kansas, playing a drifter caught up in a bank robbery, but it barely made a ripple. He kept working, but the roles were smaller. Weekend at Bernie's in 1989 became a surprise hit and spawned a sequel, but McCarthy has said he took it for the money, not passion. Even when films gained a following later at the time, it felt like a step backward. In 1991, he starred in Year of the Gun, a thriller set in 1970s Italy. It barely made a dent. He had a small role in The Joy Luck Club in 1993, a critically acclaimed ensemble drama, but by then he was firmly a supporting player, not the lead. Getting in 1994 came and went. Dream Man in 1995 went straight to video. He wasn't failing spectacularly, he just wasn't relevant anymore. And the drinking got worse. McCarthy has described this period as a time of deep disorientation. He'd spent his 20s being recognized everywhere, being told he was special, and then suddenly, nothing. Auditions dried up, calls stopped coming. When they did, the roles felt beneath him, or maybe he just couldn't connect with them anymore. He talks about feeling invisible, not because people didn't know who he was, but because he didn't know who he was. To escape that stuck feeling, he started traveling. At first, it was just a getaway, but over time, it became something deeper. He began writing about the places he visited, not as a Hollywood star, but as someone trying to figure out what came next. Slowly, quietly, that writing became his lifeline. In the early 2000s, Andrew McCarthy did something almost nobody in Hollywood dares to do. He walked away from acting and built a brand new career. He started writing travel essays. At first, they were just personal reflections, attempts to make sense of where he'd been and where he was going. Editors noticed that his writing wasn't glossy or aspirational. It was honest, introspective, and sometimes uncomfortable. He wrote about getting lost, about being alone, about the gap between who you are and who you thought you'd be. In 2010, he became editor-at-large for National Geographic Traveler, a position he still holds. He's also published several books, including The Longest Way Home in 2012, a memoir about traveling the world in search of something he couldn't name, and Just Fly Away in 2017, a young adult novel. But here's the thing. McCarthy says travel writing wasn't a pivot or a comeback. It gave him a sense of purpose that acting never did. In acting, he was always performing, always trying to be what someone else wanted. But in writing, he could just be. Around the same time, he also started directing, mostly TV, not feature films. Shows like Gossip Girl, Orange is the New Black, The Blacklist, Grace and Frankie, Dead to Me, dozens of episodes across dozens of shows. He says he loves directing because it's not about being seen. It's about shaping a story, collaborating, and crafting something meaningful. McCarthy didn't need fame anymore. He just needed to feel useful. His personal life has been shaped by love and by avoidance. He first married Carol Schneider in 1999. They had 2 children, Sam and Willow, but the marriage ended around 2005. Carol has said he wasn't emotionally available, that he didn't know how to let people in, that he was running from intimacy, the same way he'd been running from everything else. In 2011, he married Dolores Rice, an Irish author and activist. They have 1 daughter together. McCarthy says this marriage feels different, Not because he's a different person, but because he finally stopped pretending to be. In his 2021 memoir, Brat, he opened up about his struggles with alcohol. He wasn't a dramatic tabloid drunk, no car crashes, no arrests. He just drank every day for years to numb the feeling that he wasn't enough. Fame in your 20s messes with your sense of self in ways that are hard to explain. You're told you're special, but you don't feel special. You're told you have everything, but you feel empty. You start believing you're the problem, that everyone else has it figured out, and you're just faking it. Alcohol made that go away for a while. Eventually, he got sober, but he doesn't frame it as a dramatic redemption story. It wasn't rehab or rock bottom. It was a slow realization that he didn't want to live that way anymore. He's also been open about therapy, about learning to sit with discomfort, and about how getting older has been a relief, because he finally stopped caring what people thought. And maybe that's the real story. Not that he escaped fame, he just stopped letting it control him for decades. Andrew McCarthy avoided talking about the Brat Pack. No nostalgia interviews, no reliving what happened when he was 23. But in 2021, he published Brat, a memoir that forced him to face it all. The book is raw, self-critical, and deeply reflective, but apparently that wasn't enough. In 2024, McCarthy went even further, directing Brats, a Hulu documentary that reunited the surviving Brat Pack members. Demi Moore, Emilio Estevez, Ali Sheedy, Rob Lowe, they all came together to talk honestly about that era. No nostalgia, no defensiveness, just truth. McCarthy doesn't trash Hollywood, but he doesn't romanticize it either. He said the industry in the 80s was intoxicating and isolating in equal measure. You were constantly told you were special, but only if you stayed valuable, only if people still wanted you. He's talked about how transactional it all felt, how relationships were built on utility, and how quickly people moved on once you stopped being useful. Yet he's also grateful. That roller coaster of fame, then obscurity, then something completely different taught him that identity can't come from other people's validation. It has to come from somewhere deeper. He's still in the industry, but now it's on his terms. Directing TV because he loves the craft, writing because it centers him, traveling because it reminds him the world is bigger than Hollywood. He's at peace with the fact that most people still think of him as the guy from Pretty in Pink. That's not who he is anymore. It's just a chapter of his life. He says getting older has been a gift because it finally gave him permission to stop performing, to stop being what others expected and just exist. That's the happy ending. Not fame, not redemption, not clarity. So what happened to Andrew McCarthy? He didn't disappear. He stopped being who everyone expected. He refused to pretend the 80s were the best years of his life because they weren't. Instead, he became a travel writer, director, novelist, husband, father, a man who finally figured out how to be present. He spent his 20s being told he was special, his 30s questioning why he didn't feel that way, and his 40s and 50s building a life that doesn't depend on anyone else's approval. The Brat Pack label nearly broke him, but in the end, it didn't define him. If you grew up watching Andrew McCarthy or discovered him later through his writing or directing, drop your favorite role or the part of his story that surprised you most. Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Hit that like button if you felt something real, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories.